The 2018 Global Peace Index places South Africa as one of the most violent countries in the world. Gender-based violence and femicide is one of the issues that the country is still grappling with. The Gender-based Violence and Femicide National Strategic Plan was established to address this very same problem. So let's discuss this now with Dr. Olive Shisana, Special Advisor to the President. Prof, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I mean, the National Strategic Plan, especially around tackling gender-based violence, was established to address this very same issue on the scourge of femicide as well as violence against women and children in this country. How are we faring so far?
Well, let me say that ending gender-based violence is not going to be an overnight issue. It is going to take quite a substantial amount of time, and therefore let us not expect that a solution will be there quickly. The National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence was developed with a multi-sectoral approach involving everyone, with a timeline of 10 years. This is the first year that we're actually implementing gender-based violence interventions. But I must tell you, we're beginning to see changes. If you look at it from the criminal justice system, before we had a serious problem with regard to tracking the cases of gender-based violence, the South African Police Service has improved their system such that we can be able to get reports on a weekly basis in terms of what progress has been made. They all now have rape kits in all the facilities. In other words, the police stations now have got rape kits, which we didn't have. And those rape kits are really for evidence collection, for adult rapes, for children's rape, and also, for DNA. The challenge, of course, is still finding DNA sites to analyze those particular specimens. The other thing I just want to mention with regard to the criminal justice system is that the South African Police Service has set up a task team to look at the cold cases. And that task team has already looked at more than 785,000 dockets that relate to sexual offenses. So the criminal justice system is beginning to up its game, and I'm hoping that it is going to continue to do so.
Yeah. Well, Prof, the other issue at hand is how women in the rural areas particularly, those that have been affected by gender-based violence, where their places of safety are, speaking about interventions that are quite effective, especially in the rural communities. I mean, one thing that always consistently comes out is the issue around the green doors, for example. With the green doors, you'll find them in the more urban areas, but we don't find these existing green doors, including safety houses in the more rural communities. So then how then do we start placing interventions so that the women who receive and the children who receive help are not predominantly centered around the urban or peri-urban areas, but we can reach out as far as the rural communities for effective interventions?
Faith, you are quite right. You cannot have, in the interest of equity and of equality of access to services, you cannot confine your services continuously into the urban areas. I was very happy to see that the cabinet has taken a decision that in every district in this country, there must be shelters where women can be able to access them when they need them. So now the Department of Infrastructure, what is it called now? The Department of Public Works and Infrastructure,
yes,
has been working tirelessly to identify buildings and to offer buildings to the Department of Social Development to turn them to become shelters. So I'm hoping that in the long run, in every district, we'll be able to have a center that is going to be providing services for those women who are running away from a hostile domestic environment.
And in terms of just some of the challenges that you've been confronted with, I mean, as you are saying, it is within its first year that we see this rigorous intervention program. But just in terms of some of the challenges that you've witnessed, particularly on the ground, because you and I appreciate the fact that when it comes to gender-based violence, there's also psychological components that we do not speak to enough. What challenges have you confronted in being able to administer some of these interventions that you're speaking to?
First of all, to change behavior requires that people become aware of the problem. We've spent almost a year ensuring awareness of the gender-based violence. We now have like the 365-day programs that are going on around the country that would enable people to understand what problems are we experiencing with regard to gender-based violence. Secondly, you need to make sure that the civil society organizations are able to fill in the gap where the government is not able to reach. Government may not be able to reach the deep, deep rural areas or the deep, deep, areas where, like the LGBTI communities. So what is happening is that we are beginning to see an increase in the number of gender-based violence organizations at the grassroots level. They've increased from 32 to close to 80 to 86, organizations around the country. So we cannot make a difference unless we can be able to work together collectively as a whole. I must say I've been encouraged when I see that the nation is now protesting against gender-based violence, meaning that the awareness level is going very, very high. Now, what we need to do now, what is going to help in terms of changing the social norms and making sure that psychologically women are able to be supported. What we need to do is the sensitivity training. If we can have sensitivity training around the country, which has started, by the way, but it just needs to be expanded to law enforcement officials, to prosecutors, to magistrates, to police officers, to the media. So if we can manage to get messages around to ensure that everyone is speaking with the same voice and we're dealing with one national strategic plan in the country, I think we're going to make a good progress.